girls, grab your beers.
Hey everybody, this is Charlie from Anthrax, and you are listening to today's Boondoggle.
This is Mark Metcalf, and you are listening to today's Boondoggle with Bailey on Domain Cleveland Radio.
You are listening to today's Boondoggle with Bailey on Domain Cleveland Radio. Yes, Kato Kalin listens to this all the time.
Welcome to today's Boondoggle. Now here's your host.
I am Monty Heath, so one Heath, and you are listening to today's Boondoggle.
Hey, what's up? It's John from Skillet, and you are listening to today's Boondoggle on Domain Cleveland Radio.
Fasten your seatbelts.
What's going on, everybody? It's Bill Bailey with today's Boondoggle. And a real quick housekeeping note, if you're watching us on YouTube, Rumble, BitChute, or Odyssey, please hit that follow and subscribe button. And if you're listening to us on Spotify, Apple, Google, whatever podcast platform you utilize, please hit that follow and subscribe button. And also hit us up on our socials, Instagram, Facebook, X, and TikTok, and all that good stuff, so we can continue to bring you conversations like the one I'm bringing you today. Man, we're hitting the road with my new friend, TJ Hoffman. What's going on, TJ? How you doing?
Good evening, sir. I'm doing excellent. Thank you very much. This is great.
Yeah, man. Been looking forward to talking to you. Like we were saying before we went on the air, we got a lot of mutual friends and some things in common that we'll get into. But usually when I have somebody on for the first time, I like to get a quick background. So do you remember originally what you wanted to be when you grew up?
I didn't have a clue. I still don't have a clue what I want to do when I grow up. I kind of fell into this whole music thing, not at a very early age, but, in my 19, 20 years old, I do remember working for a local band in New Jersey, and I had to get a fake ID. There's a club in Newark, Studio One, and the bands played upstairs. The bar was on the second floor, so you had to be 21 to get into the bar and then 18 to the club. So I remember working for them, and I was underage. And that's kind of where I got introduced to live music, and then I kind of just gravitated to that whole thing. And it kind of it took off. And, if you watch the movie, kind of tells my story about all that.
Yeah, so like even before like you kind of got caught up working in the music industry, do you remember, you have any of your earliest memories at home? Like who are some of your influences musically, or what you were into?
Yeah, music. I mean, I was a jock. I played sports all year round. My parents didn't push me, but they supported me through the whole thing. So I went to high school to go play basketball. We had a really good program, and it was in an urban area. And I really got into early hip hop, late 70s, early 80s, Sugar Hill Gang, that kind of stuff. And that stuck with me for a long time. The R&B and the hip hop stuff. As I graduated high school in the mid 80s, it was the Run DMC and LL Cool J. A lot of that stuff stuck with me. And a little over time, then I started to listen to some more rock and roll. And then it went to metal and hardcore. And I was introduced to a lot of different things. So I have a kind of an eclectic, iPod for that matter.
Yeah, I can relate to that too. So then going back to when you first started like working and you had to get the fake ID and everything, what was that music scene like where you grew up at?
So Newark, it was the Newark, New Jersey area, and it was so fun. It was 80s, 80s metal, 80s hair bands type of stuff that I was working for, that I was surrounded by. And the Jersey scene back then was really fun. It was there was probably a half a dozen, 6 to 8 clubs that were on the, let's call it the circuit, So if you were big enough to draw a crowd and you didn't have to sell tickets to play, you could get pretty decent bookings and survive the scene. and you see a lot of the same faces, a lot of the same fans, a lot of the same people, and it was a really good time. I was fortunate enough to to grow up in this area of music that was just so empowering. And of course, my area of New Jersey, came Bon Jovi, came Skid Row, Ugly Kid Joe was this area. There was just a lot of those bands that were so empowering in the New Jersey, New York scene. It was fun. It was great. I have no regrets at all for that. It was great.
Now, as we'll get into, talking about your documentary and stuff, but what was the, when you first started like working, you were just kind of like, I'm looking for some work. I need to make some money. And then how did it grow into what it became as a roadie?
Yeah, it's funny. I didn't do it for the money. I don't think anybody really does it for the money, right? It was I was working construction. I went right out of high school to learn the trades, and I went into carpentry and basically framing houses. And friends of mine, very good friends of mine, were helping out this band, and it was basically that we need help carrying the gear. I can't go Friday. Can you go? Yeah, I'll go. All right, the three of us will go. And we helped this band load up some Marshall 412s up these steps and cabinets. And it was a bar and it was a band. And there was a lot of girls. And I was like, this is cool. I could do this every Friday night. And at the beginning, I wasn't even getting paid. It was just cool. Come hang out. We get a case of beer in our rider. I'll give you some beer. And I was sold.
Free show. You get some free beer. The ladies. Totally.
Yeah. There was nothing about the money. As it progressed and I put money into it, so I went and bought a van, and I had more room now to carry everybody's gear from the rehearsal studio or from the garage where they were keeping it, whatever. So I would ask for, listen, can you reimburse me for some gas? And, I increased my value of being a part of that crew because I had the van now and I could leave work early and I can take care of some stuff. So with those responsibilities, obviously came a couple more dollars. But I was just having so much fun. They were a great band. They were, really big in the New Jersey area. They drew a lot of girls. It was a party, and that's what it was all about for me at the time.
Yeah, and then as that kind of like took off and it became like your thing. How was it like? Obviously, it's kind of like the road can be like a family. You network. You connect with other bands and stuff. How did it grow from being, something that you ended up bouncing from band to band and just, getting good at?
Yeah. So I worked for a band called American Angel. The bass player in that band, Steve Evans, was a recording engineer in South River. And I went to school for audio engineering at night. And I was trying to learn a little bit more about sound. Again, trying to increase my value on the road with these bands. And Steve had called me a couple of times when I wasn't completely obliviated and said, I got this band coming in, M.O.D. And I was at that time, it was the last record was Surfing for M.O.D., Billy Milano. It was hilarious. WSOU, Seton Hall's Pirate Radio, was the radio station that we were listening to. And it was just a lot of fun listening to his music. So when I found out Steve Evans was going to produce and record the next record, he let me sit on some sessions, basically as an intern. And I got to know Billy and the rest of the band. And from there, they were doing some showcase stuff for Megaforce Records. Did a showcase at the Limelight. And I worked for Steve, actually played bass at the time. Billy didn't have a bass player. And I just kind of fell into being a part of that crew, working for Billy Milano. And as they got a full band together and we're going to start doing shows, I just stayed on the crew. And that evolved into my first, European tour, and then meeting more people and just networking in this business. It's like anything else, you're around the scene, you're around these people. And if you're a good guy and they like you, you're going to get offers to work with the other bands. And for whatever reason, they liked me, and I made a lot of friends, a lot of great connections. I still have those beautiful brotherhood connections today. And I do miss the road once in a while. And that's just it. It's all about being a part of a team and a community. And especially in the New York hardcore scene, it's just great. It's always like family. I mean, even after, almost 20 years of not touring with Agnostic Front, me and Vinnie still go back and forth with Christmas cards and everything. And we can pick up like where we left off on the road. I'm very fortunate and blessed to have the life that I did.
Yeah, definitely, man. And you named that's the first connection we got right there. Vinnie Stigma, man. I like you said, I mean, around Christmas time, I don't get the card, but I get a text, from Vinnie and stuff, but I'm grateful for that, man. We ended up becoming friends. I friends with a lot of people in the New York hardcore scene and the Cleveland hardcore scene where I'm from. First time I met Vinnie Stigma, I'm out there in Kings Point, New York. I think I was in the Navy and I was doing some training out there. I had the weekend off, and my old roommate, Florida Frank, who's in Hatebreed now, he was playing with Terror at the time. And they were coming through New York and playing the Knitting Factory. So I had the weekend off. I had some other friends from Cleveland that lived out there. They were part of Integrity, a Cleveland hardcore band. And so I go stay with them for the weekend. We go see Frank, and then we go to Manitoba's afterwards with a bunch of the DMS guys. We're hanging out, and I meet Vinnie, and he's like, "What brings you to New York?" And I tell him, I'm here for the Navy, training in the Navy and stuff. Vinnie gets up on the bar at Manitoba, and he's like, "Hey, listen, all you motherfuckers, this guy's the hottest motherfucker in this room." And I'm like, "What are you doing?" I thought he was going to get me killed and shit. He's like, "This guy serves our country." And and everybody's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Holy shit." I thought I was going to die, but then it's like everybody embraced me, and me and Vinnie became friends right then and there, and every time they come through Cleveland, we try and, meet up and get together and stuff, man. He's a good guy.
Great. It's great. Yeah. And, Cleveland, the first tour I did with M.O.D, the opening band was the Spud Monsters.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Don was a good friend of mine.
I got to know all those guys, and Scott Roberts really helped me being my first tour. He really held my hand and showed me the way, taught me a lot of stuff. Not so much of, I shouldn't say that, not so much. He taught me a lot about guitars and helping me be more of a tech than just a road case mover. He really educated me, but the way of the road and, bus etiquette and club etiquette and just living on the road. And when we played in Germany near military bases, he would always welcome them and you keep them on your side and welcome the friends and, max out your guest list for our people serving overseas. And ironically, it was basically for not only to support our country and our servicemen, but they would bring cases of Mountain Dew for the bus, right, and all that stuff. So there was a give and take back there on the road. But Scott's a dear friend, and I worked with him when he was with Biohazard for that short time, and I love the stuff he's doing now. And I'm sure if I ever was in a jam, those are the kind of people that I can call at a drop of a dime and ask for a favor, and they would be there for me. They're true brothers. So, I flew out to the last Flashes show that they played before Flashes closed down.
Oh, nice.
It was amazing. Yeah, it was great. It was great. Again, just at the right spot and the right time to experience that stuff with those guys. Overly grateful and blessed to call them friends.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like, I was in high school around the Flashes days, and then, I've seen Pantera the first time there, hung out with Vinnie and Dime, and
cool.
All of them. It was awesome, man. But so a lot of mutual friends right there. I know you got to have some good a good Vinnie Stigma story from your time.
Man, I got so many. I got a couple that might get me indicted, of course, that I'm not going to even talk about. But I went to work for Agnostic Front in '97. It was the Victim in Pain original lineup with Jimmy Coletti on drums, Rob Kabula on bass. It was like kind of their reunion, and they were going to start recording a new record, which turned out to be Riot Riot Upstart. Billy Milano was managing AF at the time. So Billy's studio was in Hoboken, and I was still in touch with Billy all the time on other projects and stuff, just more as a friend, going to eat. He can pick some great restaurants. And he's a fun guy to be around if you can tolerate his personality and his attitude and his comedic relief. And he says, listen, I'm managing this band. I need you to go on the road. You're going to do these. We got 3 shows at the Wetlands. You're going to do those first, and then we're going to Europe. You're going. I'm like, okay. Now, at that time, I was wearing Air Jordans. I was wearing like Michigan basketball pants. I was wearing a basketball jersey like you were. I was a drunk jock. So I was drinking, but I was playing sports all the time. And I had bleached blonde hair. I looked nothing like the New York hardcore Doc Martin and Dickies guy. But I didn't know anything about Agnostic Front. I didn't know how much of an impact they had in the music scene when I went from. I knew they were a good band. I knew they were around for a long time. And that was it. Those first couple shows at the Wetlands, those 2 sold-out shows, opened my eyes to, wow, I got thrown into something really fucking cool. And from that day on, and all through the European tours that I did with Agnostic Front, it was an opening up my eyes to a different lifestyle, right? So I went from like hair bands and then M.O.D metal, and now it's the original New York hardcore scene with the godfather of hardcore, Vinnie, Stigma, Roger Moret. Like, wow. It took me a while to realize who I was working for and who I was tour managing and that kind of stuff. And the respect that band got on the road all over the country, all over the world for that matter. It was an eye opener from, the friendship that band has with so many other bands from Green Day to Rancid to Metallica, the influence that their early music played on other bands that are obviously 100 times bigger was pretty cool. Those guys coming backstage and seeing all that. And Vinnie he's the same guy, whether he's talking to somebody at the supermarket or talking to Lars backstage at a Rancid show or a bartender or a bus driver. He don't give a shit. And the conversations, it's great. I wish I had more of my camera on filming that stuff from the 90s on. I probably could have made a lot of money with what went on backstage. Right?
Yeah. Those are good dudes, man. Big fans and much respect. Like I said, when I was living with Frank, he kind of got me into, because Frank used to play in Integrity and Ringworm here in Cleveland, and so he got me into the hardcore scene here, and then through his friendships with the guys in New York, and it's just like, if they like you and you're in, yeah. It's family and they got your back. And like I said, to this day, I'll still exchange text messages with Vinnie, and it means a lot, man.
Yeah, I'd walk into these clubs as a roadie, TMing Agnostic Front. Now, again, I was a jock. I look like I belonged in an Ignite band with the whole surfer culture and Air Jordans, and I look nothing like the Agnostic Front guys. So I would get some dirty looks in the beginning, like, "What are you doing here?" Like, we're closed, we're loading in, we open it, the doors are at 7. And like, no, I work for AF and had to show on my pass. And yeah, you mentioned Madball and you mentioned Hatebreed. And we, back in the day of the Super Bowl of hardcore, there was all these bands. So H2O, Madball, Murphy's Law, all these guys would get together. And just because I was affiliated and working for Roger and Vinnie and the band, I got welcomed into the circle, right?
Yeah.
And that goes a long way, knowing that you got, these guys kind of got your back no matter what's going on, and they're some tough fucking kids. And I didn't know any of that stuff. I'm just a moron moving guitar cabinets and handing out per diems and doing guest lists, right? I didn't know that much what was going on about the business that I know today. So that went a long way with the respect that band brings in, and how I was welcomed into that whole hardcore community. And then Roger made me go buy a pair of Dickies and wear my Doc Martens, after due time.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember like living with Frank at one point. Ezak lived out here in Cleveland. He was seeing a girl out this way. And I heard all the stories, man. And Frank's like, hey, Ezak's coming over tonight. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Like, but one of the nicest dudes, man,
Yeah, it's all about the party. It's all about the party. Fun, all fun. The fun police was never around when that went on. And even when we went to the West Coast or we went over to Europe, when it was a New York hardcore invasion, it was a party. Everybody got together. Everybody was super chill and got along and helped each other out with gear and stuff. And it was effortless. It was so great and so fun. And I thank Roger and I thank Billy Milano, and I thank Roger to this day for exposing me to that and letting me experience those times on the road. And they're still killing it. They're still out now, all across the globe. I mean, Vinnie just turned 69. He's out there on stage. They have a great band right now, and I'm very happy to call them friends.
Oh yeah, me too, man. I remember like the first, like I got into booking shows here in Cleveland after when I was living with Frank after a while, and the first show I did was headlined by Scarhead, and I was like really rolling the dice there, but it went well. It was Scarhead and Ringworm at the old. I don't know if I saw on your documentary one of the clubs that you guys hated was I forget, the one with the stairs that they had to carry all the equipment up the stairs
in San Francisco.
Yeah.
So that was Fillmore West, basically, is where we filmed that whole piece with those guys. And look, there was a lot of clubs. There's a couple in London. There's a couple in Paris. When you see the clubs you're playing, you look at the itinerary and you're like, oh, like then I'd make some phone calls and some of my local friends, can you help me load in? I'll get you into the show, or you do that kind of stuff. Jersey had a bunch of them. They were up 3 flights of steps. It was. Well,
I don't know if you ever did the Fantasy nightclub out here in the Cleveland area, but that was another one with stairs, and that was where I booked that first show with Scarhead and them. And everybody had to carry everything up the stairs, and there was like a old like pirate ship inside there. Cool. I don't know if that rings a bell if you ever hit that venue. But,
yeah, I don't know. We did a couple of shows. I do remember getting into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I want to say 98, 99. We contacted them saying, Agnostic Front, we're in town. We want to come to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And they gave us free passes. And we got in for free. And at the time, I didn't like it. I was like, thank God I didn't pay for this, because I thought it was terrible. But the clubs, listen, and they all kind of bleed together after a while. Some stand out because you had a really good experience or a really bad experience. And the rest of the clubs just kind of blended, and I really got to think about where I was, and oh yeah, now I remember that. Hey, I remember the ship, something like that. Yeah. My first tours in Germany were so cool because you had a paper itinerary with all the information about your load-in and the specs for the sound and the stage and everything. And the first 2 or 3 itineraries I had, I would peel the beer labels off the bottles of the town we were in, because most of the towns in Germany have their own brewery. So they're associated with that club. So every night we were drinking different beer from that local brewery, and I would save the label and put it in my itinerary book. So if I didn't remember the name of the club, I'd have to go to the other page and say, oh, that's right, we were drinking Duval that night, or that was the Hefeweizen night where we burned off all our pubic hair with a lighter. Like, that's how I remember a lot of the clubs and stupid shit like that. It's great. Yeah.
But then, you mentioned Ignite as well, and it's another mutual friend of ours, Zoli. Tell me about how you ended up connecting and working with Ignite and those guys.
Yeah, another of the weirdest things. So again, I had bleached blonde hair. I had the whole surfer look coming from New Jersey, and we're touring. This had to be 97. We're doing that Victim in Pain tour with Agnostic Front, and we're on the festival circuit for the summer, and then on all festivals we're doing all just local clubs. And for the longest time, for a couple of weeks on that tour, I was getting called they would yell me Zoli, and I would turn around and they would go, "Oh, sorry, I thought you were Zoli," or they would call me Choke from Slapshot. I would get those two names all the time. And then after a while, I'm like, stop fucking calling me Zoli. Who the fuck is this Zoli guy? Like, I can't wait to meet this fucking guy because I want to really see what he looks like. So fast forward about a week or so, we're doing a festival in Belgium. Ignite's on the bill. And I walk right into the dressing room. I'm like, who the fuck is Zoli? Brett Rasmussen, the bass player, and Zoli both turn around at the same time, look at me, and we look like three twins. It was the oddest fucking thing ever. And since that day, we've all become best friends. And I went on to work for Ignite for a long time. I went on to manage Zoli's solo career when he did his Zoli band stuff. I worked with him a little bit when he was doing in the very beginning of Pennywise. He's not in Ignite anymore. Brett's now touring with the new singer, and they're still out there doing it. It's great. And again, just fell into a brotherhood by chance. And that's how that story stuck. So I would take the Doc Martin and the Dickies off working for Roger and Vinnie, and then go back to the blonde hair and the bleach and the surfer look working for the West Coast guys. You know, I played the role.
Nice. Yeah, I've become good friends with Zoli, man. He's somebody I call quite often to get, because we share the same insanity sometimes, but he's the guy I call when I need help getting out of it,
That's good to have. That's good
out of my head. So I love that dude to death, man. He's a good dude. You got any good Zoli stories?
Oh my God. I same thing. Yeah, I got so many. So Zoli, it's funny. I think I kept my job with Ignite longer, and not for my technical ability at all. When I was TMing them, the guitar players, Brett and all those guys, Craig Anderson, a phenomenal, amazing drummer. They all kept their own gear. They did a lot of their own stuff. I didn't have to worry about the technical side. But a lot of times I had to take Zoli away from the band, right? That probably happens in a lot of camps. There just needs to be that separation when they're not on stage. On stage, they're a machine, an amazing talent all around. But there were times, and even when Zoli was doing some press, I would take Zoli away, let the band do their sound check, let them warm up, let them do whatever they have to do, give them a break from the singeritis that's going on. And I would take Zoli, and we would do our presses and our interviews, and he was so earth conscious about so many things, and Sea Shepherd talks, and a lot of his press was more about political issues and Sea Shepherd than it was about music. So I got to be closer with Zoli, and I would share a hotel room with Zoli on days off, so he didn't have to stay with the band. The buffer, kind of say, you know what I mean? Kind of keep the peace. Yeah. Dr. Phil guy on the road. And we were I think it was outside Frankfurt, and Zoli and I are sharing a room. And at the time, Zoli had a condition with his acid reflux and had to sleep elevated, and would get he would ask me to go to the front desk at the hotel, and he needed like 27 phone books. This is no lie. The phone books had to go underneath the head of the bed so he could sleep on an angle so he could breathe better, and it's better for his singing and whatever his story was. Okay, I'll get you the phone books. So we didn't get 27 at this hotel, but we got a bunch. We moved the bed to put the phone books under the bed, and it had to be an 18-inch black dildo underneath the bed. And we fucking just lost it. So now we call the guy back, this German guy, the hotel manager, doesn't speak any English. We try to get him back to come up to the room, and he wants to make sure there was no problem with the phone books. And then we had to show him this big dildo under the thing. Now, I got my little flip cam, and I'm filming because we're hysterical dying. And this guy's trying to explain to us why this dildo is under the bed. And that goes down as one of the top Zoli stories of all time. And we still laugh about that,
Awesome. I know exactly what I'm talking about next time I call him.
Yeah, for sure. If you bring that up, he's going to laugh. Yeah, definitely. That was a good time. And there's a lot of that stuff, experiences in 09, 10, and 11 when I was working for them. they were setting up the tours, and we were spacing out days off. Brett is another guy that just wants to have fun. So we do a show in Vienna and we're going to take a day off and we're going to go sightseeing. And then, Zoli lives in Budapest, so he's got a lot of friends there. So we would spend 2 days in Budapest sightseeing castles and doing the cruise down the Danube and doing all that cultural stuff on our days off and spacing out the life of playing clubs over and over again with some fun and days off. And, at the time I was drinking and we were doing, went to a grappa farm and we did a grappa tour. And we drank grappa from 8 a.m. tasting. You're supposed to be tasting, and we're drinking grappa all day long. And got to the show at night, bombed. And those are the kind of experiences that you never forget with people that you love working with.
Yeah, exactly. And then you would go on and work with so many bands. Like, what would you say? Like, what was your biggest opportunity for networking? Would you say like music festivals were like one of your favorite?
Yeah, growing up in the scene, and it's like a band. You want to play to the biggest audience, and you want to expose your music to the most amount of people at a show. So, working for some hair bands in the 80s, they had, a couple thousand people here and there. It was a pretty packed club. Then doing the Wetlands with Agnostic Front, sold out. I don't think there was more than maybe 800 legally allowed in the building, jam packed. When you start going to Europe and you're doing European festivals and there's 50,000 people to 100,000, take Dynamo, for instance, 100,000 people, it's overwhelming. And you don't have the connection that you do when you're playing in a club, right? So you go backstage, you go to the bar at the front of the club and you meet a lot of people and you go to the merch table and you do that stuff. The bigger festivals, you don't have that intimacy. So as fun as it is to do the festivals and play in front of those people, I prefer the smaller clubs and getting to hang out with the locals and learn more of that stuff. And I still to this day I keep in touch with the friends that I've made on the road. Whether it's, hey, can I film this band's set? And I would say, yeah, but you got to give me a copy of the tape, or give me the copy of the tape after, and I'll send it back to you, or photos. They would send me photos of stage shots. That type of communication and intimacy with the crowd is much better than a festival to me, for the fans, but what happens backstage at festivals is there's 20 nightliners backstage, and you're just, after you do your set, you're just bouncing from nightliner to nightliner, catching up with the Madball bus or the Rancid bus or the Pennywise crew, because all those guys are your friends from the States. So that becomes a big party backstage. And then later on in the later years, when it crossed over from actually having internet backstage and cell phones and Skype was a big thing, all those parties dwindled away. There was more AA meetings backstage and reading the big book and people getting together to stay sober on the road than it was partying on the road, So I look forward to that in my later career too, as well. It's like, oh, this band's out. Oh, I know the drum tech, or I know the tour manager. Oh, he's sober, so let me go talk to him and build that kind of relationship on the road too. That bond, you never forget that stuff either.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of like where I'm at today, how I connected with so many guys, and that fellowship, whenever they come through town now, it's like I could be on like a Zoom with some people, and they're like, hey, we're coming to Cleveland, come out and hang out. Yeah. And I love it now, because now it's like I remember everything. We actually talk about things that really matter,
Yeah. Listen, there are times when I think about, the good old days, let's call them, and you know, Vinnie would say, let's go have a nice dinner and a bottle of wine and let's go talk shit, kid, you know, and having that, not getting completely fucked up, but just having a drink with dinner in a different country is an experience. And sometimes I miss those moments. I don't miss drinking. I don't miss the repercussions of drinking. I don't miss any of that. But, you know, there's a different type of vibe within certain camps and certain tours and whatever when people are drinking and when they're not. And when people are not drinking and sober and are working the program, that's even more of an experience, right? So you got different levels of that stuff. So anybody that was, you know, drinking and drugging back in the day and touring and in the scene and is sober now in the scene totally appreciates the steps to where you get, right? You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
So, and it's great. And that's kind of what I said in my doc, like everything that I experienced, and thank God that I lived through it, molded me to who I am today. And I'm glad I got to be able to stay here to tell that story. You know, a lot of guys didn't make it.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say too. It's like if we didn't change and get sober, a lot of us wouldn't be here to talk about, you know.
Yeah. I probably wouldn't have a job because nowadays you need to be, you know, a TM and run monitors or run front of house. You need to wear a couple of hats with serious technical skills. So when I went to school for audio engineering, it was 2-inch tape. It was all analog. I went on the road, did very little mixing because I didn't have to, and then came back to the studio, and then there's this new thing called Pro Tools. Now I'm like, fuck, I got to get another degree in Pro Tools. Like, I don't got the patience for this. I'll just stay on the road, you know, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Now, you know, I want to talk more about the documentary too. Like what inspired you to, you know, get into filmmaking as well? And you know, as you said in your journey, you always wanted to become more valuable, learning, you know, the engineer and, you know, everything that made you more valuable on the road. Was this just the next evolution now, videography and filming and documentary?
Yeah, you know, when Billy Milano said, get your passport, we're going to Europe for 6 weeks. And I you know, it was a lot of countries. And I was like, wow. And so I got my passport, first trip overseas. I went and bought an 8mm camera because I really thought it was going to be like more of a vacation where I'd really see a lot of cool stuff and film it. In hindsight, we only had a couple of days off, period, where you could do laundry. And then everything else, you were in a club every day. So I bought the 8mm just to document me going on vacation. And when I wasn't working or wasn't being responsible like I was supposed to, I was filming as much as I could. So I started to collect these tapes and the video, and I recorded from front of house a lot of the sets and the music. And then I thought I could maybe do something like a live type of with the recording from the board at the front of house with the audio, and I could do some filming. I could put maybe some videos together for the band, maybe make some money there. I really didn't have an agenda. I was just doing it for fun, as making mementos for my home, for my family, to show my mom, look at me, Mom, I'm in Prague today, and Switzerland, and that kind of shit. That was all. So I just always took a camera with me just for that reason. No other reason. I had no aspirations to be a filmmaker, to document this stuff, to get serious about it. It was just for my own personal stuff, for memories. That was it. And it evolved into more and more tapes and just collecting this data, right?
Yeah.
When I went to work for Skid Row in 2000, I didn't bring a camcorder. I didn't. I was drum tech. I was Snake's guitar tech. I was tour manager. And there was another guy that was doing the other stuff on the stage. There was no time for me to do any filming in an arena tour. That was the first Kiss farewell tour with the original lineup with Peter and Ace. And that was my first big arena tour with that type of band. And it was, you know, it was supposed to be only scheduled for, I think, 7 months, and it wound up going over a year. but I was really nervous, and I really wanted to keep it pro, and I didn't want to fuck up, so I didn't want to be distracted of filming something when I really should have been working. And I wish I had the camera for that, because I had a lot of good times and a lot of good friends and some good memories that I wish I could have put into the film, but I didn't. So that's why the film kind of ended there. I talk about some of that stuff with Skid Row, but I didn't have the backup.
Gotcha. Yeah, but I mean, wow. I mean, getting to go on the, on the road on the Kiss farewell tour, that had to be pretty incredible too.
Yeah, it was. And I originally, so Charlie Mills was a friend of mine in New Jersey. He was drumming for Dee Snider's SMFs. And there was a local gin mill that we all went to here in Jersey that we played after our softball games, stuff like that. And there was a girl at the bar that I kept hitting on over and over again. Turned out to be Charlie's wife. And I didn't know. Oh, my husband. I'm like, yeah. He ain't here. He's on tour, whatever. I was just being a complete knucklehead. And when he came home from that tour, we all got together at the bar, and she's joking. This is the guy that's been hitting on me for 2 weeks, whatever. We became good friends. So he left Dee Snider and joined the Skids, Scotty, Rachel, and Snake, and another singer, and became Ozone Monday. They were shopping that. So we did some shows with Motley and the Scorpions, some local stuff just as an opening act. And then when they got Skid Row back together, Charlie Mills went to go work for Skid Row. So I was kind of already the shoe-in drum tech kind of guy. That opening slot didn't pay. Doc McGee was managing Skid Row and managing Kiss. So they were fortunate enough to get that slot as the opener, but it was a really tight budget. We had nothing. So it was only 2 guys on the crew. So by default, and I knew what I was doing on the TM side, I became the tour manager. And then since I was going to be on Snake's side of the stage with one guitar, and Brett Perozzi was going to do Scotty and Rachel on the other side of the stage, by default, I did all Snake's electric guitars and the acoustic 12-string and try to watch Charlie's drums. So I couldn't pass up that opportunity of, go on tour with Kiss. Okay. Even if I did it for a month, as second grade, I remember in second grade dressing up, putting the makeup on and trying to be them and acting like all that. And I was a fan. I wasn't over the top fan. I didn't, I'm not a musician, so I wasn't trying to be them. But the first show on that tour in Arizona and the 130th show at the end of all that was still an amazing show. They were performers, and it was great. It was a lot of fun. Just as well, on a different element, different people, different music, different scene. But again, just blessed to be a part of that. It was amazing.
Oh yeah. I mean, that was the gateway band for so many of the people that we know, and people I've talked to, and myself included, just the theatrics, the show itself, man. As a kid, you see that. And, I remember as a kid, I think Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park was actually a good movie.
Yeah. I think you're the only one besides Gene Simmons. Yeah,
and then I grew up, but but no. I liked, with the documentary too, it's like, you got to, with all the friendships and networking you made, you interviewed a lot of other roadies that were open to sharing some of the stories. Now, when you first we're going to take on this project, were you kind of nervous about pushback and stuff like that, or?
Yeah, kind of. So the documentary came again by default. I had a recording studio in Jersey and a sound stage, and we were doing some filming and some other stuff. And I was writing a book about just how a kid from Jersey, non-music talented knucklehead, got to tour with Kiss for a year, right? And when I mean tour with Kiss, to be a part of that element, I didn't work directly for Kiss. I wasn't part of their camp, their family, but I was a part of that tour. So I started to just write down my stepping stones again. And during the course of the book, friends of mine from California who are in the the TV world. He called me up and he said, "Hey, there's going to be this new thing coming. It's probably going to be pretty big. It's called reality TV. You should stop the book and we should try to do a roadie reality thing." And that's based on what I was doing with Ignite and Agnostic Front, like a lot of club stuff. So I dropped the book and we went right into pre-production. And I kind of was basing it on kind of like that show American Chopper with Paul Jr. and Paul Sr., because my little brother was working with me for one of the bands. So we were like kind of almost reenacting certain scenes that actually happened on the road with 9-volt batteries and getting strings and gas card, and there was all these little scenarios that were true life, that the drama of what happens on the road with a road crew is the easiest thing to film. You really technically do not need a script. It's just going to happen. So we were pitching Roadie. It was called High Tech Low Life, right? And back and forth to LA. We wound up after a couple of months we got a deal. We're with a production company, and we were just pitching networks now. So I'm going to all these bands saying that we're going to have a show. Before I got the band's permission, they wanted to know what channel it was going to be on. But before I can get a channel, the channel wanted to know what bands I'm going to have. So I'm in this middle of this push and pull thing. And I guess about after a good another 6 months of trying to get this production going, and mind you, I got the New York East Coast go, let's work. Where in LA, it's when we get to it. But it was my dime, right? It was my money and my time. It was driving me nuts. So fast forward, I ended the deal with the reality show. It was just costing me too much money. There were no guarantees. It was really hard to do, to get access. Even if I had the band's permission to film, I had to hire a local guy from the Union Hall to carry my bag, or I had to pay a filming fee of $2,500. And this is sponsored by Bud Light. You got to pay Bud Light $5,000. It was like, oh my God, this is stupid. So I said, I got to stop this. So I stopped. Year 2013, I'm with Brett from Ignite, and right in Huntington Beach, and I just took a break, and me and him are kind of just talking shit, soul searching about stuff. And he knew what I was doing with the TV show. And he says, "What are you going to do now? You got all this footage. You got all these interviews. You got a bunch of stuff. What are you going to do?" I said, "I don't know." I said, "The only thing I could do is make a fucking documentary." And then we've looked at each other, and the documentary is born. And I thought in the beginning I thought I could be Michael Moore. I thought I can go as an outside guy, kind of a host, and infiltrate this world of roadies and road crews and really paint the overall picture of how this industry works, what these guys do, how they do it, how they leave their families. And I really wanted to humanize the position, because nobody realizes when these tours are on, like, Taylor Swift just ended 197 shows. These guys were on the road for 2 years, on and off, but for 2 years. They missed weddings, birthday parties, funerals, like so much personal shit that a normal person that works 9 to 5, they do all that. So with that whole thing, I thought I could really paint a really nice picture. And as we started building chapters of the movie, and there's no script, and I'm not a script writer, so we're just chopping up, and I'm throwing different segments into a timeline, trying to put this piece together so it's compelling, so it had a storyline, but people weren't going to fall asleep at the same time. And I had to watch what I was putting on as far as what's on the reel, because there was some debauchery, there was some drinking, there was some shit that was going on that the people that I was filming were still working. So I couldn't really expose that side of them on the professional side. And it evolved into so many different movies, honestly.
Yeah.
And the producer that was working with me on it from the East Coast, Andy Stroll, we were using my 8mm footage as placeholders. So we were watching the footage, and he would say, "That's a great line." And I was like, yeah, I'll get somebody famous to say that. I'll get a real roadie to say that, because I didn't want it to be me. I like being behind the scenes. I I have a problem with, I had more of a problem being on camera. Like I was a little shy about all of that. And he said, okay, we're going to put it in as a placeholder, but it's going to tell the story. And then as the movie progressed, he said, we're going to keep your footage in. And I got really deflated. Like, it's not what I wanted. I'm paying for it. This is all on my dime. I want to make my movie. I sent the first cut to a friend of mine in LA, ironically, who was helping me with the reality TV part. And he agreed with my producer and said that this movie needs more TJ. So from there, we kind of spun it where I was just going to salt and pepper my story a little bit more into it. And then the last interview we ever did is Andy Stroll and John Mangan, the other producer, they interviewed me. And that's the part where I got emotional and they pulled a lot of shit out of me. And I didn't know it was coming. I knew I was getting interviewed, but I didn't know what they were going to ask me. And after that interview, it just came together. And I was like, okay, I'm convinced this is probably the best movie that we're going to have with what I have now. Because honestly, I could have done 100 more interviews. There's so many people to talk to that I'm interested in their story. And again, humanizing their position and making their ordinary life in the beginning, how extraordinary it is now. Like I love hearing those stepping stones on how you became where you are today. And not so much, like the Noel Gallagher who was a roadie and now, Noel Gallagher from Oasis, a lot of these guys that are musicians that have the talent, a lot of them started as roadies. So I could have filmed forever, but at some point you got to stop and really just make the movie.
Yeah.
And that's the story of that.
Well, like you were saying too, man, where I really connected with watching your film as well is you sharing the stories of, like your relationships that, it's the road or the relationship, and a lot of times the sacrifices that are made and the things that are missed while you're away. I mean, I was paralleling it to, my time in the military and when I got deployed and I missed my daughter's birthdays and I missed some, special events and stuff like that. And I don't think I had as much debauchery and fun as you guys did when I was away, but, I love the human side and you bringing that out. And I think it's, I've read and heard the story of, the Cliff Burton tragedy, but you had a firsthand account. You were able to have a firsthand account from somebody that was there. And that was the first time that I heard from someone's mouth the situation and stuff that you were able to bring in to that as well. Like how, I'm talk a little bit about that and getting all these people together to share.
Yeah. So that's a funny story. So I fell into that. I didn't go look for that story. It came to me. So, when I started to interview professional tour managers, techs, people in production, I went to my inner circle first, people that I know that I can call up on the phone and say, look, I'm doing this project. I promise, as much as it's going to be, because you hear roadie and you think of the Meatloaf movie or you think sex, drugs, rock and roll. You think about the hookers backstage and the heroin addicts and the drunk and the sex, drugs, rock and roll, which was a really prevalent thing back then. It was, you can't avoid that. But I kept telling my friends, it's not going to be that. You have to trust me with the camera. I know as a roadie, if there's serious drama or something going on in guitar world, I'm going to pull back. We're going to film somewhere else, right? Yeah, just trust me with the interview. Trust me with the questions. Trust me where this thing is going to go. It's not going to be a smut piece. So that's how it started. I interviewed just a couple of people. And then after they got to know me and I did the interview, they would say, this is super cool. You got to talk to my friend who does this. And you got to talk to this guy. And do you know her? Because she was on. And so I got vouched for, right? So Meg McRae in the movie, she's a Lower East Side punk rock girl that was working for a lot of big bands. She really elevated her career. And I said, I really I want to come to California. I'm going to be in California. I want to come and interview you wherever you're comfortable doing it. And she said, okay, I'll get back to you. We'll pick up a date. Well, unbeknownst to me, we hung up the phone. She called Roger from Agnostic Front and said, hey, some guy TJ called me. He's doing a film. He wants to film me. Is it cool? Like, I don't know this guy. And Roger said, no, TJ's legit, no problem. So through those stepping stones, I got legitimized and trusted and got welcomed into other camps. So that was just leapfrogging. I was taking notes and names and making introductions via either Facebook or LinkedIn, whatever. And exactly how the connection came with Aidan Mullen, I'm not quite sure. I don't remember. But Aidan was working for Peter Frampton at the time. And we were in Nashville filming. And Aidan says, yeah, listen, I'll do the interview with you. I like what you're doing. And there's the Peter Frampton's going to be here from 2 to 4. But if you come early, can we end the interview by 2? I got to go to work. And I was like, cool. Well, as this conversation evolved, I got Peter Frampton to agree to be in the movie to talk about Aidan. He did cancel that day, so I had more time to film with Aidan. And we filmed Aidan's story and a lot about him and his son and all this other stuff. And as we're wrapping up the gear, I just casually mentioned, what's next for you? And he's like, oh, I got this other thing, but it's a bus tour. And, I'm still nervous about being on a bus. And I said, oh, but how come? I didn't put the connection together that he was there. And then he went and told me that he was on the Metallica tour with Cliff. And I said, wow. And I said, are you allowed to talk about that? And he goes, I am, but I could see he was a little gun shy. Like, he was very cautious. But we reset the cameras up, and I went back and re-interviewed him for another hour specifically about that. Mm-hmm. And I'm getting goosebumps now because when I did that interview, it was really emotional. And it was emotional for him to bring that story back. And I thought it was important to put in the film because you always heard the story from Metallica's side, right? From the band side. And I know there was some legal stuff going on. And I did ask if they would be behind the story, Metallica camp and management. And they said no. They didn't believe. They didn't want to get behind what was going to happen. They didn't know what the interview was, but they didn't want to get behind it. I reached out to Cliff Burton's family. His sister and father was alive at the time, and got permission to put Aidan's story in my film. 1, for the legacy of Cliff Burton, and 2, for Aidan, because they still feel and love Aidan and realize what happened on that. And again, I fell into it, and I'm more upset that I can't use more of Aidan's original interview in the film because it was great too. And, he told about Peter Frampton's guitars and walked me through the day, and it was great. He was a beautiful soul, and I'm so grateful I got to be friends with him. I mean, he's out with Def Leppard now. But just to be able to pass that story along to the masses, including in my story, it just meant a lot, and I'm really grateful that I fell into that.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely huge. Like, like I said, first time hearing a firsthand, thing, involvement in that, and just like, that was a pretty emotional part in the story, and also, like you were saying, talking about the inner demons of road life, and sharing that, and you mentioned, like getting permission to be there and everybody and being legitimized, but it's still like, hey, if anything crazy happens, we're pulling back. Like sometimes it's like, as we were talking earlier, it's like I made a lot of friends in the industry, but I've never really been in the industry other than when I would promote like local shows in Cleveland. So sometimes it still feels like the Masons, like I can only go so far, and then the cliques kind of like, but I guess it's the same thing if they were hanging out with me and my military buddies, they wouldn't, understand. So I try not to take it personal, like, Yeah,
it's hard. I mean, there were some people and there were some camps that said they prefer not to be involved. There was people that I interviewed that got back to me later after they saw some of the trailers, the very first trailer, and because it did have it showed a needle, it showed a bottle of Jack. They saw that and said, we don't want to be a part of it. And I respectfully so, no problem, no love lost. After the fact, though, I got a lot of people that came to me, whether it was backstage or at a show, or people that I don't even know. You're the roadie guy. Like, oh wow, that great job. Like, thank you for what you did. And there was other techs and roadies that said, damn, why didn't you call me? I wish I would. I have a story for you, and I wanted to be a part of it. And it's like, I'm sorry, I didn't know you then, and I you'll be in part 2. That's what I promised everybody. The sequel.
Well, I mean, this could end up becoming like the reality show. I'm sure you have so much that
I would love to do something.
Or a mini series, a Netflix special or something.
So they had the Vans, the Warped Tour show, right? Did you saw that with the roadies, Warped Roadies?
Yeah.
Back in the day, I think it was like Access TV or one of those things, which was great. It really was good, but it was, it was Kevin Lyman's baby. It was a Warped Tour thing, and it just showed those guys, and it was cool. I was like, I missed the boat. Like, they're going to steal my idea. And then when Cameron Crowe's movie came out, Roadie, or as a Showtime series rather, I said, now I really missed the boat. Like, it's over for me. But after watching it, and it didn't get a second season, and there was a lot of pushback from the entertainment industry because it wasn't realistic. It wasn't true. And the viewer didn't know it, but the industry knew it. So it wasn't well received. So there's still hope. And I think that what I wanted to do with this film 5 years ago was make it the pilot episode for a recurring series, right? But I want to do it smart, and I want to do it right. Like, I'm not looking to I don't want to make $1 million and then run away and put a shit smut piece out with some really shit. Well, people are never going to talk to me again. When we were pitching the reality show, Atlantic Records would say, yeah, listen, we'll give you 2 of our A-list bands that are on big national arena tours, flying all over the country, and we'll give you access to that. But we want you to take on some of our up-and-coming newly signed bands. And I said, that's exactly what I want. I want to show the bands and roadies that are working for Bon Jovi, that are flying and arena gigs, that have, I don't want to call them Four Seasons type of a tour, but they get catering every day. They get a hot meal. They get a warm bus. There's bus food at night. They're taken care of well, and rightfully so. They deserve it. But I also wanted to show where I came from, where you're sleeping on a van on a 3-day trip across the thing, and you're scraping quarters and dimes for a Magnum ice cream at a truck stop, and cold showers in Germany. Like, just totally 2 different lifestyles on the road. So I said, with open arms, do I want to take the van tour, the up and coming band who's struggling to survive to make it, and the roadies that are helping them, if they even have roadies. Those bands, they're their own roadies. Right. So I want to capture that, and I want to share that story. And then, of course, you have the nightliner and the bus tours. And then you got the guys that are staying in Four Seasons that are really, taken care of. Elton John's crew has been with him for, I think the youngest guy in that tour has been with him for like 16 years. Like, that's a career. That's a lifestyle. That's a true family. Right. Yeah. So you have all these different elements of being on the road. And I really wanted to capture that in some kind of recurring series. Because listen, let's be honest. The guitar tech that's working for Elton John and Davey Johnson and those guys, they're drinking wine, and they're going to the Louvre, and they're keeping in shape, and they're reading all kind of eclectic books and stuff. And then let's just flash back, 20 years ago, the guitar tech that's working for Motley Crue. He's in Paris. He's not going to the Louvre. He's going to the red light district, right? It's the same job, but with that camp and that band, it's a different job.
Yeah.
So I think there's so much more that can still be told if I get the right people to get involved with me to back it up. Especially now with, I don't need network approval for a lot of shit. I just don't have the capital or the time right now to really push forward, you know?
Yeah. Well, you just reminded me too about, you know, like the difference when I was a young sailor in the Navy, you know, and I was deployed over in you know, we hit a stop in Italy, and how many of the guys went to the Vatican, you know, for the culture and, you know, and had the stories to check that out. And I was red light district, halfway laying in a bar in my own vomit and stuff like that.
Totally. I was there,
You know?
bro. I know exactly what you're saying. And listen, it's part of it, right? It's part of it. Who knew when you're there what you really could take advantage of? Now, look, later on in the later days, like with Ignite, yeah, we took a day off and we went to the Louvre. And Brett, he's an awesome TM, and he planned it all out. And we had the map of the Louvre, and it's okay. We're gonna go to here. We're gonna see. We only have, you know, we had a time limit, but these are the hot spots we want to see in the Statue of David. And we did it, and we jumped back on the subway, and we got back to the club in time. And I really appreciate that so much more than just sitting in a pub somewhere in Paris, having, you know, wine, shots, drinks, whatever it was. Great memories, don't get me wrong, but more valuable memories I took later on with touring like that, right?
Yeah, that's why I'm saying, like 19-year-old me, you know, wasn't seeing the picture back then. You know, I was just like, all right, you know, where's the hookers, where's the alcohol, and that's where I was at. But now looking back, you know, 51-year-old me is like, man, I really wish I would have went to the Vatican when I was over there. That would have been cool to say I did all that. But it's like you said, you know, different time. And, you know, you talked about the like you said, the demons of road life that you were battling, the sleep deprivation and, you know, all that. But then, you know, what for you, we've already mentioned too, sobriety and recovery. How, when did that come in the picture for you? And, you know,
yeah, so September, I celebrated 18 years. So my sobriety date is September 16th. And I wasn't, let me think. I was involved in music and doing some stuff, but I wasn't touring. 2004 was the last time I got arrested. And I had a pretty good job in construction, working for a large company in Jersey. And I had a nice house on the golf course. And I was drinking a lot, and I was married at the time when I bought my house. She liked to drink. I liked to drink, and she wanted to have a son. And I said, at some point, if we're going to have a son, we need to quit drinking. One of us needs to stop, because this is ugly when it's on, it's on. And I'm sure you can relate to that with how people act when they both drink stupidly. And I went on a golf trip to Pennsylvania, 4 days. We were in Pittsburgh, and I drank Pittsburgh out of Jägermeister. And I just said, it's time that I think I'm just going to take a break. My liver needs a break. And I never, September 16th, I never went back. Never went back. My son was born in 2007. So September 16th, 2006 was my sobriety date. My son was born in 2007, and I quit drinking because I didn't want him to see me being a complete fucking Mama Luke when I'm drunk. It's not fun. It's not cute with a kid. And I was sober before. I got sober when I was 18 after my first arrest. So I had a taste for the program. So before I was even legal to drink, I was already going through the stages and in and out of AA, and I had made some great friends, and I thought I was on the right path. And, you know, being in a Catholic school, and I did a lot of youth ministry and charismatic renewal, and really had a great faith-based life. Alcohol and drugs just took over. So when I got sober at 18 for the first time, it didn't last long, because I didn't want to do big book meetings. I wanted to go to the dances, and I wanted to be around all the social activities. I wanted to go to the picnics and be with the girls and the conventions. But when it came down to really working the steps and being part of a close-knit group with some men to get sober. I didn't want any part of that. So I strayed. I went back to drinking. Quit drinking again in my mid-20s, but that didn't last. I just wasn't ready. And then in 2006, that was the end of it for me.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I mean, unfortunately for me, it's like, I had, my girls in the early parts of their life, they were, they did get to see dad drunk. Unfortunately, they had to get loaded in the car to come pick dad up. Mom had to load him in the car to come pick dad up, ruined, so many times I'd put the TV on for him so I could sleep off a hangover and set up like a little pillow octagon for them, thinking that they'll be safe. And thankfully they were. It wasn't until like that last deployment I went on that I saw a couple flag draped coffins go home, and I had that moment of clarity, like, well, what if that's me? What are my kids going to remember of me? And that's when like the seeds were planted. And then I had like this big welcome home party at Peabody's Down Under, and some bands and stuff played for me. And that was my last blackout. And I remember just getting up the next morning, just ruined. And my oldest daughter was just like, Daddy, I don't want to see you like this anymore. And she was just 8 years old, like, I don't want to see you like this anymore. I'm like, I don't want you to see me like this anymore either. And I like pinky swore I would stop. And thankfully, then I started going to meetings. I got sober and saved, and
Awesome.
I don't always get it right, but I got 15 years of not drinking. I still think like a drunk. That's why I got to jump into meetings often and talk to other guys to get me out of my own insanity.
That's great. But let me ask you something, man. When you were going through that with your children, and that was 15 years ago. So when you talk to them now about it, did they learn from that at all when they saw you at your worst? Do you think that helped them grow up?
Sometimes I think that there was parts of it where they had to grow up too fast and miss some childhood, where they had to take care of themselves. Like when I was on that last deployment, like my 8-year-old almost like was stepping up to be a parent to, she was 4 at the time,
Wow.
And a lot of that, here they are now like 24, and my youngest is about to turn 21. And there's still sometimes this struggle of my oldest saying, well, this is my daughter. I got to take care of, because you guys were too, and I'm like, I've been sober how long, man? I told you. So unfortunately there's a lot of still healing.
Yeah.
That has to be worked through, and
because sometimes in hindsight, our worst is it could be the best thing for some of the other people around us to learn, and say, wow, I never want to be like that. And I'm going to think twice about me picking up the bottle, because I don't want to be that. And I was the same way with needles, right? I knew a lot of people that were shooting up and passing out with the needle stuck between their toes, and that scared the shit out of me. Yeah. Mind you, it scared the shit out of me, but I was still drinking shots, Jägermeister, 8-ball, ecstasy. Like, that didn't scare me. But at some point, you just take a step back and you're like, wow, yeah, okay. The ripple effect of how my addiction is affecting other people. All right, maybe this isn't just for me anymore. So I appreciate you sharing that with your, what you went through with your daughter, because that's not an easy thing when the kids are that young. And sometimes I say in grace, and I just hope that your relationship grows stronger, and it will as you get more sober and you get closer to your kids. Someday it'll all be back to normal, right?
Yeah, I mean, when I look back at the journey, I've been sober a long time, but there was a long period where I was a dry drunk and I wasn't involved in meetings, and I was chasing other addictions. Like, when me and their mother separated, and I was in college, I was, revolving door of other relationships, and that wasn't good for them either. And I'm still very selfish and self-centered a lot of times. And I also, like, I was just talking to my sponsor, like I said, before we jumped on for this interview. And I'm just like, I still got these control issues. I'm still trying to control every part of their life. And I got to learn to step back almost like a sponsor to my kids and, just make suggestions, but let them grow up to be adults. And I'm in a place now where at least they feel more comfortable coming to talk to me. I'm not the rageaholic I was before that scared them away. They at least come talk to me about stuff now when it gets, bad enough. But then there's other times they don't want to hear what Dad has to say. I'm not that cool unless I'm getting them like on guest lists and stuff like that.
There you go. Yeah, that's what happens. I'm going. My youngest son is 17 right now, and I'm going through the same thing with him. Senior in high school, can't tell me what to do. He's smoking weed. He's partying with his friends, and he's never seen me at all. And I don't know where this comes from, but he's got my gene. He's got the addiction gene. So yeah, listen, we just got to let go, let God, and he's got a plan for everybody, and it'll, like my sponsor tells me, it'll all work out and be fine. And if it doesn't, it'll still be okay, right? So you got to hang on to that, and good news, man. I'm glad that you got 15 years, and I'm glad that we can tie in some of the music and sobriety, and us old farts in our 50s talking about old school punk rock. It's fucking great. It's so fun. I really I could do this all night long. You hear me talking shit. I love talking about it because there's so much more that I want to share and be, and just, I get a lot of people ask me, how do I get in the business, and how did you do it, and can you make a phone call for me, can you get me on this tour, and can you get me that? They see my film, and there's hope that they can be involved in the music business, because they're not great drummers and they're not in a great band, but they live for the music, and it's the heartbeat, it's the pulse of a lot of people. And I try to do the best I can with what I have. And like we say in the program, you can't keep what you have unless you give it away. Yeah. So I want to be the fucking knucklehead roadie guy that was just being able to share what I have just means the world to me. So I really appreciate your time in this, man.
No, man, I appreciate you too. And like what I really, that's my first sponsor. There's a saying that I carry from him all the time is with recovery and sobriety is the good news you'll start to feel again. But the bad news is you'll start to feel again, right. And living life on life's terms. But I like it at 51 years old now, man. I can show my emotions now, I did, man. I started crying at the end of your documentary when you were real and vulnerable and put it out there. Cause I can relate. I can feel that now today, man. And I really, really love that part.
I appreciate that, man. Thank you. Yeah, that was hard. That was hard for me to watch. And of course, when we screened, the debut of the film was at the Garden State Film Festival in Asbury Park, and it was at a theater on the boardwalk in Asbury Park, New Jersey, the same theater that they did my interview in. So a very good friend, Jason Dermer, who runs all the Asbury Park audio, he got me access to that stage. We rented the stage for a couple hours, and I got to do my interview there. And we interviewed him the same day. So when I had to escort my mom to her seat at the premiere to watch the film with my aunts and uncles, because she didn't see it, it was just weird walking her down the aisle to sit in the same theater that I got interviewed on and broke down with that. And then, in my program, I'm very close with my mother now. And we talk a lot about my days of drinking and drugging and what I put her through. And thank God it's all good now,
Yeah. Yeah. One of the blessings that I had received too before my father passed was, getting sober and working this program and being able to take him to some, spiritual groups that I was involved with. and sharing those moments with them. And, you know, I remember my girls were young and my mom was watching my daughters, and dad was my date for this little potluck thing I took them to, you know, and we come home and my dad grabs my mom's hand and grabs my hand. And he's just like, I want you to know how proud I am of our son. And then I just started crying, and then my mom started crying, and she's like, and my dad's like, why are you crying? And we both look at it like, he's been waiting his whole life to hear that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Listen,
because of this program, I was able to get that blessing. And now, you know, he's long since passed. He was a World War II Marine. So I was raised, you know, very, you know, under that world, you know, but now I be of service to my mom whenever she needs me, you know, for things. And, you know, that's part of just keep paying it back. Cause I was sharing with a friend the other day, you know, did you ever get the curse from your mom? I'm like, oh yeah, I did. You know, that curse of, I hope your kids treat you like you treated us, you know? And it's like, yeah, I kind of, sometimes I'm dealing with that. And the same thing. It's like, both my girls don't seem to be into drinking, thankfully, but you know, they enjoy the weed. And, you know, my youngest is about to turn 21. She was born on New Year's Eve. So I'm like really scared, you know, she's turning 21 on New Year's Eve. And I'm like, man,
yeah,
you know, but I got to give it to God and trust that
it'll work out. It'll all work out. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great stuff, man.
Hey, before we get ready to wrap up, I want to ask you a couple questions that I normally ask my guests on here. I know we went over our original time limit, but like you said, I'm sure we could keep talking all night.
And I promise to give you one Stigma story before we end. Okay.
All right. Awesome. You've worked with a lot of bands, but musically, you know, you mentioned, you know, Sugar Hill Gang and some of your early hip hop influences, but today, who are your top 3 musical artists that you like to listen to?
Oh man. So I got on a kind of like a Kenny Chesney No Shoes radio kick. So I'm really enjoying some of the new country music that's coming out, and I listen to a lot of that. But you know, it's funny. I have an old school CD player, and I go back and I pull out all old, like Gretchen Goes to Nebraska, and I pull out those CDs, and I really enjoy older music from that era of growing up in the late 80s and early 90s. I love the new Shinedown stuff. I love what Corey Taylor is doing out there. I mean, there's so much good stuff. I listen to more podcasts these days because I try to educate myself a little bit more.
Yeah, I'm into those too when I'm driving and stuff, and try and get some ideas on how I could try and do better with this, you know.
It's so hard. I have such an eclectic taste. I went through the whole you know, like I said, the 80s metal thing, and I'll put Slave to the Grind in. I run a lot. I could put that record in and listen to that over and over. Subhuman's definitely my favorite Skid Row record. I love that. I could listen to that over. Some of the old original, you know, Ignite, A Place Called Home, right Upstart from AF is, you know, let me put it this way. I listened to a lot of the bands that I worked for when they were touring that record. So the M.O.D. Rhythm of Fear is my favorite record. Maybe not the USA for M.O.D. was great too, but I think it means more to me when I was involved with those guys, right? So they're my friends. So the music means more to me, and I could put myself in situations. And you know, a lot of the Skid Row songs, I'll listen to a song and I'll have a flashback of when I fucked up Snake's guitar, or it was out of tune, and the look that he would give me, you know, I crack a smile like, oh, that was such a great time in my life. And this song, that's where it means to me. And again, I'll put on the radio, listen to some different stuff. You know, I love Harry Connick, and I love some jazz every once in a while. And I just bounce all over the place, to be honest with you.
You know, it just reminded me too. I think I went to that Kiss Farewell tour in Cleveland, and Ted Nugent was one of the openers, but Skid Row was on there, that one as well, right?
That's the one.
Yeah.
Yep. We were the opening slot for Ted Nugent and then Kiss. Right.
Yeah. Okay. So, you know, it's funny because I actually was working for I was a driver for an escort service in Cleveland around
Nice.
that time.
I wish I knew you then.
Yeah, well, here's the thing that they were friends with Tommy Thayer. The owners of the escort service used to be, work with Tommy Thayer in a band, and so Tommy had a setup where the girls got front row, and the drivers got third row. So I got to go to see that show. I was third row center, and then all of a sudden, a couple of my buddies that were huge diehard Kiss fans that spent like probably $800 or something for those third row seats or double fisted beers. They come and they're like, "What are you doing here?" And I'm there for free. And then after the show, I got to go over to the Ritz or whatever and hang out. I got to sit down with Doc McGee and talk with him and Ace and all those guys. It was a good time, man.
Yeah, Tommy was their tour manager on that tour. And, listen, Doc McGee's a genius and he's a legend in the business. And I was fortunate enough to sit in on a couple of, I don't want to call them meetings, lectures, right? He would come in and a little pep talk to the band about stuff. And I was around for some of that, not a lot of business stuff, but I learned from Doc. I learned a lot from Tommy Thayer being a tour manager for the band, right? And Patrick Whitley, another legend, was the production manager. I learned a lot from him. And there's so many people when you surround yourself with amazing, brilliant people, you just gravitate. And I have a big ear, and I always wanted to listen. So and Tommy he really helped me out, and he didn't have to. I was just, we were the misfit kids on that whole tour. So there was no drinking or drinking of alcohol in the Kiss stuff. They really try to keep it away from the band, Ace, right?
Yeah.
Ted Nugent had no liquor. Ted Nugent doesn't drink. Tommy Aldrich, I think, maybe had a 6-pack every once in a while in the dressing room, but they weren't drinking, partying. And then you go to the next dressing room, which was us, and we had cases of Jack and beer, and our rider was fucking ridiculous. So being managed by Doc, we got away with a lot of shit. And again, Tommy knew, and he really helped me out. He guided me, put me under his arms a couple of times, and set me straight, along with Patrick Whitley and Robert Long, who's now a phenomenal production manager for many bands. I learned a lot from those guys. So sorry to distract from your story, but Tommy's a good dude. That's
no, it's great, man. Because I wasn't sober yet, but because I had a responsibility that night driving a couple of the girls that ended up being able to go hang out afterwards. I got to sit there, and I remember sitting at the table, and there's Ace, there's Doc McGee, and I'm just listening to them talk, and I'm taking it all in. And, I got a picture with Paul. They all signed my Destroyer
great.
CD
great.
and everything. And then, Gene wouldn't take a picture at the time, but, at least he signed my thing for me. And like I said, I just got to hang out and just sitting there with Doc, man. That was incredible.
So real quick, funny story about that. And I guess I could talk about it now because it's like 25 years later. When we would roll into a city, we would call the strip club and let them know we're with the Kiss tour. We're on tour with Kiss, and we're looking for a spot, a place to go after the show. What time are you open till? And do you have a secure VIP section? That's all we said. You're with Kiss. Yeah, we're on the Kiss tour. We're going to come to your club after. What time are you open? Do you have a secure section? We want to make sure we can get in with no issues. And, is there a VIP section? So they thought we were going to bring the band. And we would roll in and, where's Paul? Where's Gene? Where's the band? Listen, I don't know. They were behind us. I don't know if they're coming out. So we got the VIP. All the girls, we got all the first dibs on everything. We're drinking, we're running up tabs, and all on their name. They had no intention of coming to the show. We piggybacked on being part of that crew. And of course, you walk in with your lamb, and it legitimizes you. And we pulled that card quite a few times in some pretty good strip bars in America.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And then we both are parents. So I like to ask this question too. What what class do you feel should be mandatory before graduating high school today?
Well, I wish they would bring back shop, right? You know, that kind of stuff. You know, I was in high school from 84 to 87, and I went to a private Catholic school. And I had typing class, and then computers. I think there was like a computer elective where you can go for half a year, whatever, and learn computers. And I'm like, fuck that. Computers aren't going to be nothing. I'm going to home ec. I went to go learn how to sew. And I did that my junior year and my senior year. And, you know, to this day, I still sew. I sew my own shit. I can fix my pants and hem stuff, whatever. But I wish that there was more of a, you know, metal shop and wood shop in the trades these days. Because my son's a senior now in high school. He's in school in Pennsylvania, and the classes are shit. What he's learning now is not going to be anything that he's going to really use going out of school. You know, that's what I really wish America would get. Give the kids an education that they want, that they could practically use in the field. That's in life going forward. I think that's the biggest thing that we're missing.
Yeah, exactly. Because, you know, once the power goes out or something, you know, it's like, you know, what are you going to do?
Yeah, the trades are hurting right now across the country. And listen, I'm a true believer, you know, meeting so many Europeans, and I have dear friends that from Germany, you know, they get out of high school and they have mandatory 2 years in the service, whether they go right from high school or I think they're allowed to take 1 year off, and then the following year they have to do their military stint. I think we should do that. I think every kid needs to have a little bit of discipline, has to serve their country, has to be a part of a country to feel that sense of pride, especially the way we're disconnected right now in this country. And I don't want to get this political, but I think that I think this batch of kids and the COVID kids that are coming up, America's a bunch of pussies. Yeah. It's not like me and you when we were back in the day. It's a different world, and it needs to be turned around, and we need to have a little more thick skin and toughen this country up and get your hands dirty and stop hiding behind a degree in computer science, and fuck that. And that's my opinion.
Yeah, you're preaching to the choir here, brother. I'm dating a girl 20 years younger than me, and she's got young kids, man, and I get called a boomer all the time for how I'm trying to, like, you know, now, you know, be an influence on her kids. And I'm like, hey, man, it worked, you know? Yeah, it worked. So I don't know, man. I agree with you 100%, man.
Yeah.
Hopefully we got some hope there.
Hopefully. Keep your fingers crossed, right?
Yeah. And then who are 3 people who've inspired you and you can credit for making you the person you are today?
Wow. So there's a lot. So I went to private Catholic school my whole life, and there was a teacher, a priest that I was very close with in youth group, and was close with him during my addiction and arrest, and kind of kept me close. So, you know, Father Bob is definitely one. You know, putting aside my parents, because I think that's everybody's, right? Obviously, who they make who you are. There was a neighbor across the street from me that my dad was not that athletic at all. So I was on my own. And there was a guy that ran the local community center down the street from me that I would play basketball every day after school. That kind of took me under his wing and guided me, practice, doing drills, just getting better, which led me to get the scholarship to go to high school and that whole thing. So Vinnie O'Leary was another one. And then as I got older, there was tons of people in and out of my life that I took pieces of, right? I take a piece of this guy and a piece of that guy and tried to do the best, like an all-star team, right? When they're selected, you pick the best of every little position and stuff and put it together. And then, of course, you know, when we get to talk about touring and on the road, I mean, I met Billy Milano for a couple of weeks, and he liked what I did, how I handled myself in the studio. And even though I was running downstairs and down the street to the bar and back and forth, Tim McMurtry, we would go and do a couple shots and drink and come back. He saw that side of me. He took a chance and says, you want to go to Europe, and took a chance on me. And without that introduction of the M.O.D tour, I probably wouldn't have gone any further than the local New Jersey scene,
Yeah.
So I give Billy and Timmy a lot of credit for letting me work with them. $50 a show I was getting, maybe, but just opening that door to that world led me to Agnostic Front and Biohazard and Ignite, and then having that experience when the opportunity came to go work with Ozone Monday and Skid Row. That ladder I never would have got to that rung without Billy in that role. So listen, I'm very grateful for everybody that touched my life. Even the people that I was shitty to, and I still go through making amends because I knew I was a dick. I was a dick in high school when I started to use, and I was a dick. Listen, I was a fun drunk and a fun drug addict. I wasn't about, I didn't have a bottle under my bed. I wasn't that kind of drunk. And even though I did get arrested a couple of times, but to me, it was the party. It was fun. Let's go have fun and crazy havoc. And it was harmless fun back then. Right. But I'm still making amends. I do realize that I hurt people, and I don't deserve to be a lot of friends with a lot of people, but they've forgiven me and moved on and realized that, I'm in a different place now. So I'm very grateful for all those that touch my life that get to contribute to making up fucking TJ,
Yeah.
That's it. Very, very grateful, blessed, and humbled. And I can't thank everybody enough that was a part of my film, that did it for free. I paid for everything. I paid my editors and DPs guys as we went along, but not one person that was in the film ever asked, what's in it for me? What are you going to give me? They were just so fucking welcoming with this project. And I'm forever grateful to them. I still see them on, when they come into town, I try not to play the card of put me on the guest list, but I do say, do you have time for coffee or a lunch? And I'm very grateful. I mean, the only thing that I do really in music right now, besides I'm still editing and logging other interviews for my Roadie film in case anything happens, but I'm one of the video producers on Shiprocked, which is the music cruise that every year that I'm part of that team that works for the owner. And I'm the Mama Luke that walks around with the microphone, getting the fans' reactions to the week experience with the bands and the crews. And I get to see a lot of great bands and crew members, and it's a different world. It's roadie on a boat. It's a little bit different. So I get to experience that. And I don't think that I would be able to have that gig if I wasn't in the scene when I got into it. So I'm very grateful for that. It gives me an opportunity to keep my feet wet, more or less.
Yeah. Figuratively and literally on the cruise.
Yeah, for sure. So it's great. And I'm forever grateful, man. I have no regrets, and I have no animosity or anxiety about anything. If my helicopter goes down tomorrow, man, I lived a really good life with a lot of great people, and I'm so blessed. Like I said, for whatever reason, my guardian angels got my back, and I'm here. So I try to take advantage of it every day, and again, I try to share what I can to help my fellow man.
Gotcha. And then I always got to ask this question. It takes people back. Favorite toy as a child?
Fuck. Yes, I was a BMX kid growing up. Right, so I used to race the BMX, the 20-inch bikes, and then when freestyle kind of got big in the late 70s, early 80s, and I built a quarter pipe in my driveway and another ramp in my front yard, and so I was always a bicycle kid. So the bikes were always my toy. Like that was my go-to. Nice. Before that, it was all the other shit. It was like and I'm sure you can relate, it was like Sears catalog stuff. You circled a bunch of shit that was cool, the Tyco race car things, shit that lasted 2 weeks, and then it was in the fucking garbage.
Yeah.
You know, it was
Yeah.
it was kids' toys. But for me, it was the bicycle, and to this day, you know, I do some triathlon training with my road bike, and I have a mountain bike, and I still love it to this day to go get a little solitude. You know, mountains and ocean, that does it for me now.
Nice. And then any message you have for our military members currently serving overseas?
Oh man, listen, can't thank them enough. You know, I knew a lot of roadies that got to go overseas and play in some really crazy places where our troops are stationed. Skid Row did. I wasn't working for them then, but they did go play for the troops and did some USO stuff. Yeah, I wish I could have been a part of that, because fuck, that's the best. I mean, what the country stands for now. I'm a Mission 22 ambassador, and I try to spread that word too about the 22 vets with suicide. We do not take care of our military at all. We don't take care of, excuse me, the veterans that served overseas. I was very involved in the VFW, the auxiliary, for many years. Probably more selfishly because of the cheap beers, but at the end of the day, he's trying to raise money and keep those facilities open in their remembrance. Listen, I can't. I was a Marine for a day, and that's for a whole nother podcast. My music career never would have happened if I stayed in the Corps. But it's not for everybody, so it wasn't for me. But I do thank our military for doing what they do and the sacrifices that they make for the pride of our country that half of the country doesn't appreciate one bit, and that fucking drives me insane. So hopefully in the next couple of years, things will turn around and we can get some of that pride back and properly thank them and take care of them for their service for the rest of their lives. And I just want to say thank you to you for your service, because I didn't serve. So thank you for being there for me.
Thank you, TJ. Man, it was real. I knew we'd have a good conversation, man. I knew there with the connections and everything, and especially the recovery and all that. I appreciate the talk we had, man. For any fans out there that want to check out, the documentary and see it for themselves, where would you send them?
So if you go to the website, roadiefilm.com, it shows the platforms that they're on. I've been just pointing everybody right now like towards Amazon, because it's the easiest, right? Everybody's got Amazon Prime. And I think if every click that happens on Amazon, I think I get like 1/10 of a penny. So the more clicks, the better.
Just like Spotify for movies or something, huh?
Yeah, listen, COVID, the world went upside down, and so did independent filmmaking. And there was a chance when I was making the film that I would definitely break even, right? That was never a question. Then as the movie progressed and I attached some of the names and artists to it, it really made it legit. There was a chance that I was actually going to make money. Breathing room. COVID hit and everything went, no more independent films and no more docs and no more people getting behind those films, because all these Amazons, Netflixes were putting money into Brad Pitts and all the big actors, and they were putting all the money towards that stuff because Hollywood wasn't making film. So I got kind of fucked with that whole thing. But what it's doing now for me, and I'm not mad about it. It is what it is. It's the world. But the exposure that the film is getting, it's opening up doors for me to meet new people, potentially work on other projects and other films with other independent new filmmakers. Other bands have contacted me if I could help them, and would I be interested in doing a film on their band. We're doing some pre-production right now for some stuff that's revolves around outdoors, and trail running and skiing and all kinds of stuff. And the film basically is my resume that I can say, listen, I'm not fucking Spielberg or any of these guys, but I did do this little documentary, and every project that I get involved with is based on the foundation of a roadie and behind the scenes and putting things together and showing people how certain ideas and events get evolved and showcasing the people that put blood, sweat, and tears into it to make these things like ski races and trail runs and again, humanizing these events and these people. Because I think that's important. I think a lot of things get looked over and taken for granted. So I'm grateful that I can have that exposure on Amazon and show people what I can do, and hopefully I can help somebody else. So many people have helped me along the way. Again, not asking for a dime. So now it's my turn to pay back and pay it forward. So I hope I can do that. And I think that the film too it's timeless right now, right? It's not dated, so people can watch it and still relate.
Oh yeah,
to my story and to the industry, for hopefully for another couple more years until somebody puts out either another doc or I get to put out part 2 and show what happened since I stopped filming, So again, just very grateful, man. I got a lot of grateful. I have nothing to complain about in life, and I'm very fortunate, very fortunate.
Yeah, awesome. TJ, man, thank you so much for your time. You mentioned a Stigma story. You got one really quick before you wrap up?
Yeah. There's like 2 things that stick out. So I'm gonna pick one that we're in northern England. I think it's Bradford, and it was an Agnostic front show. Billy Milano was managing them, and he was on this tour with us. And he was handling all the money, the finance stuff, settling at the end of the night. And Billy literally we had to walk the guy to a local ATM machine to pull out money to get paid, or Billy was going to take the soundboard. He started to unplug the wires from the soundboard. He's like, fuck you. I'm taking this board. It's going on my bus till you pay me. So we had to go on the bus. Vinnie was in the dressing room with the guys from The Exploited. And they were drinking, they were partying, and like, Vinny, we got to go. We got to lock the club. We got to go to the ATM. And we're going to go on the bus. Now, at this time, it's probably like 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning. Some of the guys on the bus were sleeping. Vinny's like, I'm just going to stay here and finish this beer. Come get me when you get back. Okay, we go to the ATM. We do what we got to do. We come back. The whole club, everybody else in the club locked. They locked up. The front doors are locked. The back doors locked. It's dark. We're closed. We go on the bus. Vinny's not on the bus. We go to every bar in like a 1.5 mile radius in northern England looking for Vinny, and I'm pretty sure it was the Exploited guys, for hours and hours. And there's no cell phones back then.
Yeah.
So we're trying to call another promoter. We're trying to get somebody to come back to the club. We didn't know where they were, so we were waiting and waiting. Now it's starting to get light out. We got to get on the road. We had to drive to the next gig. While the sun's coming up, and sure as shit, the back door of the club opens up, and Vinny and the guys are still in the same spot, still drinking, still partying, still talking shit. I'm like, Vinny, what the fuck are you doing? He says, TJ, you told me to stay here. I fucking stayed here. I'm waiting for you. You don't show up, so I fucking stay here. You can't get mad at the guy. He's right.
Exactly.
He was totally right. And that's Vinny. He didn't care about nothing else. He's with his friends. He's having beers and drinking, and they're talking shit about the old school hardcore. And as mad as everybody was, you can't get mad at Stigma. When I told him he's had to stay there and he's got to wait, he waited. He didn't leave.
Yeah.
But that's one of my favorite Stigma stories. Besides him yelling at me, we went for dinner in Paris, and we went to an Italian dinner, and I went to take a knife and fork and cut my pasta. He almost flipped the table over. He grabbed my fucking throat. He goes, "You fucking cut pasta in front of me, you motherfucker. You'll never eat pasta again." He's grabbing me like this, like, "Don't fucking insult my family." And he was serious. Like the Italian that he is, little Italy Italian. Yeah, that was another one. That was another one.
That's
But
awesome.
listen, let's do this again. Let's talk more shit.
Yeah, for sure, man. I got your contact, so we'll got to stay in touch, man. In fact, let me wrap this up, and I got some information for you.
Listen, thank you for everybody that watches your podcast. Thank you for doing what you do. And again, if you watch the film, please enjoy it. And if there's anything I could do for anybody out there, do not hesitate to contact me through the website. I would love to be a part of anybody's project and help any way I can, as I was helped. So thank you very much, my friend.
All right. Thank you, brother.
Cheers.